2 OTAs are in the books for the New York Giants, and they have a couple more coming up. They will roll out through the remainder of May and go into the early part of June. But through 2 practices, I want to take an inside look at the top position battles that are going on. We've heard a lot of good stuff about Drew Lock. We'll talk about the slot corner position. Tyrone Tracy is starting to make an impact as a rookie. There's a lot to talk about on today's show as you're watching Giants Now by Chat Sports, and I am your host, Marshall Green. The remaining dates of OTAs, when practices will take place, will go from the 23rd is when they come back, and that's actually the first time the outside media will be present at Giants practice. So we'll be able to get a lot more information and make these shows even better for you guys. Then on the 28th and 29th, they're back-to-back with it. They take a day off, and then they have another practice on May 31st, and then June 3rd, June 4th, June 6th, and June 7th. That's when they will wrap up OTAs. And then they got mandatory minicamp, June 11th, June 13th. That's when we'll start to get some concrete answers on this football team. After 2 days of OTAs, I think the top position battle that is taking place is the one for QB2 on this roster. We've talked about how Locke will compete with Jones, and I don't know necessarily if they will compete in the offseason, but I do think that if Daniel Jones struggles early on, they could put Locke in. But for today's show, we're focusing on Drew Lock versus Tommy DeVito, the competition to be QB2 and maybe only earn that roster spot at QB. Joe Schoen, in 2 years as general manager, Brian Daboll, as 2 years as head coach, has kept 2 quarterbacks 2 times. They've never kept a third. Maybe they do this year with Daniel Jones and his injury history and the injury guarantee. But through 2 days, Locke has had much more success than Jones. Locke threw 6 touchdowns during team drills on day 2 of OTAs. What was interesting to me, though, with the people that he hooked up with to find 6 were mainly people that were not on the first team offense and maybe not necessarily on offense team number 2. Tyrone Tracy, rookie running back, 5th round pick, caught 2 touchdowns from Locke on Tuesday. Miles Boykin caught 2 touchdowns from Locke on Tuesday. Gunnar Olszewski caught 1, as well as Tyree Jackson. And none of these 4 players are really getting reps like that with the first offense, and maybe only a couple with the second offense. And then we heard on day 1, the first touchdown of OTAs, Tommy DeVito hit starting running back Devin Singletary, kind of on a seam route out of the backfield, just kind of ripped it up the middle of the field, caught it, ran it in for 6. So you got Locke putting up more production so far than DeVito, who DeVito also found Jalen Hyatt for 6 on day 2 of OTAs. But Hyatt and Singletary for DeVito, those guys are running with the first and second offense. Locke throwing to guys like Tyrone Tracy, Miles Boykin, those are second, third, and fourth string offenses. So it's been a little bit interesting to see who these guys are running with so far. Nothing to be alarmed about, but I don't think it's something to talk about. And you know what? It's still early on, so things could change. But I do have Locke as QB2. I believe he is QB2 and will be the second quarterback on this roster. But if DeVito wants to guarantee a spot on this team, he's probably going to have to beat Locke out. So I don't see how the Giants just 100% are going to keep 3 QBs. I think they probably should, because if you cut DeVito, you're not getting him back on your practice squad, whether he doesn't want to come back because he was slighted at a chance to compete for a spot on this roster, or another team picks him up as their QB2 or their QB3, or gives him more money or a better opportunity as a practice squad quarterback. So I want you to pick it in the comment section. Who should be the second string quarterback on this team? Is it Drew Lock? Is it Tommy DeVito? I think it should be Lock, but I also think DeVito should be on this roster as QB3. Let me know who you think in the comment section. The slot corner is another interesting position battle for me that I think is taking place early on in mini camps, OTAs, going on in OTAs to start. We talked about how earlier this week, UDFA Alex Johnson out of UCLA had a lot of success at corner in college, made a couple of plays early on. And we've also heard Brian Daboll say that he has the utmost confidence in Cordell Flott being an outside corner. But you've got a lot of slot corners on this team. Nick McLeod plays his best ball in the slot. Flott was more of a slot corner in year 2 than year 1. Kind of struggled a little bit there, so I don't know if he'll have much of a shot there if he doesn't win the boundary corner job. But then you got a guy like Andrew Phillips, who you just picked in the 3rd round. Joe Shane called him a slot corner the day he was drafted. Aaron Robinson, still working back from injury. He had a lot of success in the slot his rookie year. Darnay Holmes has almost exclusively played in the slot his career. So you got McLeod, Phillips, Holmes, and even Flott somewhat competing, as well as Alex Johnson, the UDFA, who is not pictured on our depth chart because you don't make my depth charts until you make the team. UDFAs don't get that right here on this show. No disrespect. That's just the rules, baby. Don't play me. Slot corner, though, according to Brian Dable, is a premium position. The Giants selected Cordell Flott in round 3 of 2022. They called him a slot corner at the time he was drafted. The Giants used another third-round pick in 2024 on a slot corner in Andrew Phillips. They think that is a primary and premium position. He said so following rookie minicamp. Finding out who that starting guy is going to be and the initial backup, that's going to be fun to see how it unravels coming up the rest of the summer. The top 2 safeties on this team are also going to be a position battle that I am really, really focused on because I'm a big fan of Jason Pinnock, and I like Dane Belton. And I've said it now for a couple of episodes here on the show this summer that Belton is a guy that I think could be a boom or bust type of player. I think he could raise his level of play if given more opportunity. We've seen him make game-changing plays. He's all over the field defensively. He's always in the right spot at the right time. He has a knack for getting his hands on the football as a defensive player, and that's such a high praise of a compliment to give a defensive back. But the Giants also signed veteran Jalen Mills early on in free agency, and they drafted Tyler Nubin in the 2nd round. And the Giants picked Nubin, a ready-to-play safety, so he could contribute as soon as possible. So you're going to have Pinnock, you're going to have Belton, and you're going to have Nubin competing all summer long for those top 2 safety positions. And I like the veterans that you have in Belton and Pinnock. I think both of them can give you more than what they did last year, and they will be asked to do so if they are the top 2 guys with Xavier McKinney outside of this building. But I want to see Nubin on the field. Your 2nd-round pick should be playing almost immediately. But where does Jalen Mills come into the fold? We know Shane Bowen likes to operate with a lot of defensive backs on the field. Last year with Tennessee, he operated out of the dime personnel grouping at the 2nd highest rate in the National Football League. And if you're going to have a lot of DBs on the field, yeah, you need them to cover, but you also need them to help in run support. And Belton, Pinnock, as well as Nubin can do that. Even Jalen Mills can get in the box and kind of get it going every once in a while. I'm really, really interested to see what happens at that safety position. We've got more position battles to break down in a second, but you got to get your Brian Burns Giants jersey today. He's rocking number 0. I said on Twitter, maybe he'll be the last person to ever wear number 0 for the Giants, as we know how they like to retire numbers. Go to chatsports.com/Burns. That is chatsports.com/Burns and get your Brian Burns jersey today so you're ready to go for the preseason in week 1. Not the most sexy talking point here, but you know what? If you're watching Giants training camp battles at OTA on May 22nd, you're down with the nitty-gritty. And I appreciate that out of y'all. Wide receiver 5 and wide receiver 6 on this roster is going to be a bloodbath of a battle to find out who makes the 53, and it starts at OTAs. You look at the depth chart at wide receiver. You know Malik Neighbors, Darius Slayton, Jalen Hyatt, and Wan'Dale Robinson are all locks to make this roster. Giants kept 6 receivers last year. I assume they'll do the same this year. Maybe they go to 7, but that's a high number for any team in this league. So you got 2 spots between Isaiah Hodgins, Allen Robinson, Gunnar Olszewski, Isaiah McKenzie, Bryce Ford-Wheaton, and Miles Boykin, who has already looked pretty good at OTAs, and maybe one of the UDFAs, like John Giles, makes this roster. I think it's going to come down to Hodgins versus Robinson. I believe only one of them will make the team. And I actually have Gunnar Olszewski making this roster as wide receiver 6. We've read some things on Giants.com, how he's being used more so as a wide receiver, and he's ready for that opportunity. But Joe Shane has been burned one too many times by fumbling punts. Twice from Richie James, once from Eric Gray, a couple times from Eric Gray, as well as once from Sterling Shepard. He's going to keep a punt returner on this roster, and that's going to be Gunnar Olszewski. So I'm really looking at Hodgins versus Allen Robinson for that wide receiver 5 position. Running back 2 is also a spot that I'm going to keep my eyes on all summer long. We know motor Devin Singletary is going to be the lead back for this team. Really good runner inside the trenches, has his limitations. He's not a home run hitter, doesn't have that top-end speed, But if you need 3.5, you need 4, you need 4.5, got to pick up a tough 3rd and 2, he will do that. And he's also a sneaky receiver out of the backfield as well. But the Giants have a lot of players at this position and guys that they have used pretty premium draft capital on. Eric Gray was a 5th-round pick. Tyrone Tracy was a 5th-round pick. I believe Gary Brightwell was a 5th-round pick. You're not keeping 6 running backs. And you also have Dante Turbo Miller, who a lot of people reportedly like. And Ryan Dunleavy said he's got an opportunity to compete for the RB2 spot. Are you ready to give up on Eric Gray after just 1 year? Is Gary Brightwell done? Jashaun Corbin should have made this team last year. I had to pick him up in week 14, 15. I liked Turbo Miller. I don't know what he's going to bring, but if I had to bet on any running back outside of Devin Singletary providing an impact for this football team next fall, it's going to be Tyrone Tracy for me because he brings a skill set and an ability and really just a profile of a player that nobody else on this running back depth chart can provide. And that starts with his background as a wide receiver. The Giants don't necessarily have a receiving back on this team. And I think that's going to give Tracy an inside route at getting on the field early on. He can come on the field on 3rd downs. He can motion out into the slot. He can motion out wide. You could have technically Tracy and Singletary in the backfield at the same time. But I'm not so sure he's going to be second in carries on this team. I think he might, but I think also Eric Gray deserves the first crack at that. I like some of the things he did in the preseason last year. And he's the guy that knows the system. And you use the same draft capital on him as Tracy. I think Gray is closer to Singletary than Tracy is, but I think Tracy is closer to Cordell Patterson and that type of flex playmaker that he is. So who do you think will be second in carries this year for the New York Giants? Strictly running back position. Not talking Daniel Jones or Tommy DeVito or Drew Lock. I believe it's going to be Singletary. And then who? Help me decide in the comment section right now. And make sure you are following me over on social media. I'm at @MarshallGreen_ on Twitter and Instagram, trying to up my social media game this summer. So help me out and let's go Big Blue.